So at the end of the day, we get hopefully close to the same marketing insights that advertisers are used to getting in a world pre sandbox. From the MMP perspective and the advertisers that we at Singular work with, we know that last touch attribution is still key for marketing decisions.
So Privacy Sandbox for Android is out. It looks really good. There's a lot there, but there's still a lot of questions. There's still a lot of things that we don't know or that we're going to have to figure out in the industry. Some of those challenges include siloed attribution and coordinating aggregation keys. The challenge, if those aren't resolved, is we could have confusing data, perhaps unclear insight on what's working. We need ways for networks and measurement partners like Singular to work together. To chat through this, we're talking with Jonathan Chen, a product manager at Singular. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thanks, John.
You talk in one of your latest posts about siloed attribution. What are you talking about? What do you mean?
Yeah, so siloed attribution is something that we think, as documented, the Android Privacy Sandbox applies when they make an attribution decision. And what this means is that for those ad platforms that are using the sandbox, when they get an attribution decision, it's actually only looking at touch points, clicks, or impressions that they served. So in the real world scenario where you potentially have multiple, let's call them ad networks, all serving clicks and impressions to, presumably the same user, at the end of the day, you could have multiple ad networks all trying to claim credit for that eventual conversion. And this is what the Android Privacy Sandbox does, according to the documentation. Attribution is determined per ad tech platform. So this means that at the end of the day, when I click on a bunch of ads by different ad networks and I install the app, each ad network is going to get their own attribution decision in the form of the postback and whatever reporting the sandbox gives them.
Super.
And this does mean that everyone thinks they'll claim credit, and that's how we'll show in their report.
Everybody wins. Everybody gets a gold star. Everybody gets a blue ribbon. We also have challenges with coordinating aggregation keys, correct?
Yes, exactly. This is actually something very unique and honestly pretty exciting in terms of possibilities, and it's defined in the sandbox. So, what aggregation keys are is essentially, as the name suggests, keys that you must define in order to get, let's say, access to reporting and attribution information. The way that you use keys in the sandbox is the ad tech platform who is serving clicks and impressions and registering them with a sandbox. And this is called the process of registering sources. They need to define a key when they register that source. Um, and when the app is finally opened and there is an install, which is a conversion, you use the sandbox to also register that install, which is called a trigger in Google language, in Google lingo. And when you register a trigger, you also have to provide an aggregation key. And in order to get the resulting attribution report, um, your aggregation keys need to match. So, in technical terms, this makes sense, but in practical terms, when you have ad tech platforms serving ads and clicks and impressions, and then you have the advertiser code, registering installs. Uh, they don't know what keys that each platform are going to use, right? So you need to figure out how to communicate with your ad network. Like, hey, what key did you use when you served the click? And I need to use that same key, right?
Hmm.
Which sounds very unintuitive, um, but it kind of makes sense why aggregation keys were introduced this way.
It reminds me just a little bit, and I know it's very different than SCAN or SCAD network, but it reminds me a little bit of the early days of SCAD network when we were trying to figure out, what data are we going to get? What data our ad networks going to get? How are we going to coordinate? How are we going to figure that all out? How are you going to know what a conversion value is, and coordinate that between ad networks and MMPs and apps. What are the consequences if we don't address some of these questions?
If we don't address these challenges and we use the solution and tools presented by the sandbox as is, it means that it means integration is possible, but it's going to be very difficult to coordinate everything. Um, you have so many different ad tech platforms and players out there already, and you have constant updates to apps, and those challenges, as we've seen in SKN org. Um, the more the more threads that need to be opened between all the different entities and making sure they're all using the sandbox the right way, the more opportunity there is for issues. And we know that generally translates to pause campaigns, weird data, and because of that, the inability to actually make decisions in your marketing.
Exactly, not knowing what worked, what to do in the future because I want to do more of that, less of what failed. So, big picture, what are kind of the requirements for a solution here?
So I think first and foremost, the requirement is to use the sandbox to its fullest capacity. And that means a lot of things, but to do it in a way that makes it as easy as possible for everybody in the industry to adopt. And all of this is done for the benefit of the advertisers. So, what is simplest and easiest to manage from an advertiser's perspective? I think that is one of the key things that I myself am looking at when I try to figure out, hey, how can all the ad tech platforms, ad networks, MMPs work together and try to make this as easy as possible to understand for our customers?
Maybe let's dive a little deeper into the integrations between the ad networks and MMPs. What are the pieces and components that we need to build?
Yes, exactly. So in our solution, we still need to ensure that ad networks can continue to serve clicks and impressions and report them to, in this case, the sandbox. And on the other hand, when it comes to measuring installs and other app conversions, that advertisers still have a easy way to do so when using the sandbox. And this is where we kind of dive into, okay, how can we look at the sandbox and other tools that could allow us to do this? This is where we get into the concept of redirects.
Mhm.
So, very interestingly, the sandbox during source and trigger registration. So, remember, source means click an impression, and trigger means install an event. During the registration process, you can specify redirects. So, this is very interesting. The sandbox intentionally provides a way for an ad tech platform, whoever it might be, the ad network, the MMP, or the advertiser themselves. They intentionally allow a way to share information about the click or impression or the install event. So this is kind of the starting point as to how we can envision or create a solution that works for all of us and makes it hopefully as easy as possible to use.
Hopefully, as easy as possible. Absolutely. It's funny when you're talking about sources and triggers. We kind of have to learn a whole new vocabulary here. We already had to learn something new with SKAD Network, but now we have to learn a whole new vocabulary here. Google's built something that's indicative of a player that knows what's going on in mobile marketing, mobile advertising. They are the world's biggest ad network after all, but they have changed our language a little bit. So they've moved our cheese. We got to figure that out. So, assuming that the industry builds, the ecosystem builds the things that you're talking about, we get the ability to get the integrations, the redirects work. We're sharing some data, possibly in the aggregation services that Google's talked about in terms of privacy sandbox. Where does this get us? What do we get out of it at the end?
Yep. So at the end of the day, we get hopefully close to the same marketing insights that advertisers are used to getting in a world pre sandbox. from the MMP perspective and the advertisers that we at Singular work with, we know that last touch attribution is still key for marketing decisions. Obviously, there's a lot of sophistication and innovation being done for MTA and MMM. But when it comes to, hey, at the end of the day, how much credit do I want to assign? Who should I give credit for on a macro level? What does my overall marketing performance look like? It's last touch, and that is the goal, and hopefully the end result of a integration sandbox.
It is interesting that you say, hopefully to basically the level that we are at right now, because right now on Android, you've got the Google Ad ID, and much as the IDFA, that gives you quite a bit of certainty with some wiggle room here or there, with some challenges here or there, with fraud and other things you've got to account for. Quite a bit of certainty as to what's happening, what caused what, at least for last touch. And you're hoping to get close there. It is interesting because with iOS and SK Ad Network and all the things that Singular has built in specific around that modeling for missing data and cohorts and other things that are coming, you know, I think people lost something like a third to half of their capability to understand what was going on, and Singular's hoping to replace a lot of that. It's interesting that you mentioned that on Android. Maybe we'll get back to there. I don't know. What are you thinking? It's totally spitballing here, but 70%, 90%, maybe even more in some cases, because there's more data in some cases, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the data will be presented differently, and it's up to us, the MMPs, ad networks, to figure out how to get the data to a place that advertisers are used to seeing. And maybe advertisers will adjust to whatever is possible, right? And it might not be exactly the same. But in terms of what data is made available, I think looking at how the sandbox is proposed right now, there shouldn't be a loss of data. Unlike SK Ad Network, well, so first of all, in SK Ad Network, we do know the concept of privacy thresholds, and that really limits uh, what data is available. Right? Theoretically, you can get 100% coverage of, let's say, number of installs over a given period through SK Ad Network, but you get limited granularity of what happens after that install, which is what advertisers mostly look at. They don't care just about installs. They want to see what happens to the users in their app after they get acquired. With the sandbox, there doesn't seem to be that big of a limitation in data availability after the fact. Um, in the sandbox, there is a scan-like postback that is being sent. There's mentions about how noise will be added to the postback, so you can't 100% know if it happened or not. But the way the sandbox introduces the noise is through differential privacy. And one of the things about differential privacy is when you look at a large enough data set, it should still be accurate.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at specific chunks of data, like for an individual user, can't know with 100% certainty that it's true. But in aggregate, everything is accurate. So that's the interesting thing that comes out of the sandbox. Aggregate results should still be accurate.
Interesting. And in addition, you're getting three postbacks versus one postback. They're smaller in size than the uh, conversion postback that you get from Scan, but you get three of them. So there isn't that. I've heard marketers mention it as stress of SCAD network, where you've got to get it right. You got one chance to get it right and get the information you need. With Privacy Sandbox, you've got three shots at it. So you can add a little bit of information, get smarter as somebody uses your app more, and add a little bit more, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So there's that scan like postback. As you mentioned, there are quote unquote more opportunities or more times that say data is shared. That's certainly interesting, and we'll definitely be doing a deep dive and figuring out what is the most optimal way of using that. But on the other hand, the Sandbox also introduces a new concept not available in Scan, which is the aggregatable reports. So that one is really interesting. That one theoretically allows much more granularity than the, let's call them scan like postbacks. Um, and this is where we see, at least myself, see a lot of interesting possibilities and ways to present attribution data back to advertisers.
Absolutely. Campaigns, geos, creative, language, a lot of different things like that. Super interesting. So, as you're working through all of the Privacy Sandbox for Android stuff and figuring it out and building vision for product and all that stuff, what remains to be figured out?
Um, yeah, so I think one of the main things to figure out is the reporting possibilities. As mentioned, there's this whole new concept of aggregatable reports introduced with the sandbox. Um, with Scan, advertisers have, in a way, been forced to think about what an aggregate only world looks like. And in many ways, they have turned to MMPs to do this. Hey, MMPs, you're already great at aggregating data. You obviously know how to do attribution. You're integrated with all my ad network and channel partners. Makes sense for you to try to do this for me. So we can apply a lot of those, let's say, discoveries and um, innovations and apply them to the sandbox now. So it's kind of great to see that at least the philosophy of using aggregate only data now can be applied on Android as well.